another great pleasure this morning is for me to introduce the person who is the chair of the Wheeler Center Board of Directors, Dr. Bill Teets. He is the former president of Montana State University in Bozeman, and I am going to ask him to come up to the microphone now, and he's going to start us off this morning. So, Dr. Bill Teets, thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Very, very great pleasure to welcome you all on behalf of the board of the Wheeler Center. We are presenting forums for the discussion of public issues, public policy, and are dedicated basically to an educational culture. We pride ourselves in being nonpartisan, and I'm certain there are those in the room who would assume that since we're coming from Bozeman that we're not partisan, but we try. And we are politically nonpartisan, in spite of the fact that we have loyalties to the institution that gives us a sponsorship. We've had previous programs that I think were of significant interest to the state of Montana. Taxation and reform. We had some issues on water, on academic freedom. A wide variety of programs that have affected the institutions as well as the public policy of the state. And we would like to emphasize the fact that we are a civil discussion group and try to present as many of the sides to a particular problem and controversy as are available. Why Burton K. Wheeler? Why Burton K. Wheeler Center? I would like to ask Bradley Snow, who is the great-grandson of the Senator Burton K. Wheeler, to give a brief synopsis of our background in terms of Mr. Wheeler. Bradley?
Hi, good morning. Thanks everybody for coming out. I'm Burton K. Wheeler's great-grandson, and I've been associated with the center for 16 years, ever since I moved to Montana in 1991. I'm just going to say a few words about my great-grandfather in the center. Burton K. Wheeler was a consistent supporter of free speech and freedom of the press throughout his long and storied career in law and politics. As Corky indicated with his story last night, Wheeler didn't just support these rights when it was easy or convenient to do so, but as he did in 1918, often when by doing so he risked his own political future and even his personal safety. In 1917, BK, along with other Butte attorneys, helped arrange for a $12,500 loan that enabled the startup of an independent, labor-oriented daily newspaper that some of you may have heard of, the Butte Bulletin, to compete with the Anaconda Company-run dailies in Butte that blanketed news coverage there at the time, in Butte and Anaconda. Wheeler believed that the people of Butte and Anaconda deserved an independent view of the news and a voice on the important issues that faced them. During his entire tenure in politics, Wheeler clung tenaciously to the Jeffersonian idea that a well-informed public is the cornerstone of a healthy and vital, a well-informed public is the cornerstone of a healthy and vital republic. It was with these values in mind that four men, three of whom sadly are no longer with us, longtime Wheeler confidant and Montana broadcasting pioneer Ed Craney, Montana historian and later MSU president Mike Malone, Wheeler's eldest son John Wheeler, and fortunately for us, the one who is still with us, Bill Teets, founded the center in 1988. Later, my grandfather, Edward Kendall Wheeler, became deeply involved with the center after the death of his older brother, John. The center's mission has been to offer forums for the exploration and discussion of vexing policy questions that face the state of Montana. It is to the center's credit that many across the state view it as a reliable, non-advocacy-based, honest broker on any question it might take up. I think my great-grandfather, B.K. Wheeler, would be proud of the center's accomplishments and would recognize himself and his core values in its DNA. Thanks for being here today.
Riley. I'd like to mention that these kinds of programs are not done with just grace and energy. It takes a certain amount of support and money. We're very, very fortunate to have had the support of the First Interstate Bank of Montana. This group has supported the Wheeler Center and a number of our endeavors, and in this particular case have been a very staunch supporter. Kelly Ruderman is the principal from Interstate Bank. Is Kelly here? In addition, the Sterling Savings Bank from Livingston has been a significant supporter, and I don't believe there's anyone from the Livingston Bank here. Is there anyone from the Sterling Bank? At any rate, they have been a significant sponsor of this particular program. We're dealing with the price of paradise and in Montana, and in this case, affordable housing. And some discussions that I've had at the table just this morning relative to the price of paradise may well be a topic for the future, in which we add to that planning for the future, planning for population changes and demographic changes in the state of Montana over the next 20 to 50 years. But at the present time, we're talking about a much more immediate issue, and that is the matter of affordable housing. And here to introduce our morning speaker is Andrea Davis from the Missoula Housing Authority. Andrea?
Thank you, Bill. Good morning. My name is Andrea Davis, and I'm with the Missoula Housing Authority. I work as the Director of Planning and Development there. And I'm honored to introduce our next speaker, who comes to us from an organization that complements the efforts of the Wheeler Center. But at first, I was asked to provide a brief background of the Missoula Housing Authority. MHA was created in 1978 from a vote from the citizens of Missoula. They charged us with providing safe, decent, and affordable housing to Missoula citizens, and we take that charge seriously. Generally, housing authorities administer federal subsidies such as Section 8 rental assistance or public housing. And in 1998, HUD encouraged housing authorities to develop an entrepreneurial business model that would access non-traditional public housing authority funds and to assist a wider range of people, and to develop a sustainable revenue for the organization. And that is what Missoula Housing Authority has done. In 2001, MHA sold 45 difficult-to-maintain public housing units. They were not meeting the needs of our 2-year waiting list. That generated $4.5 million of capital and also resulted in 35 replacement Section 8 vouchers and 10 public housing contracts, of which we have 9 on the market as of today, to add to our total pool. With the development fund, MHA was able to creatively leverage other grant and loan sources to house the neediest populations. Missoula's Homeless Coalition, that's known as the At-Risk Housing Coalition, identified the gap in permanent housing for homeless singles. MHA acquired state home funds and HUD Mod Rehab Section 8 grants, in combination with $650,000 of its own capital, to build the Uptown Apartments. The Uptown was a deteriorating brick motel downtown Missoula, and now has been revitalized, displays public art in the courtyard, and houses 14 previously homeless individuals in single-room occupancy or efficiency units right downtown Missoula. And we're proud to say that we have 100% occupancy almost continually there, so it's been a great success. That is one example of creatively addressing the housing equation and thinking outside of the box. As we heard last night from Ann McCullough, we all need to be prepared to find new solutions to new challenges every year. Another use of these development funds was to loan the money to other local nonprofits to hold land while they accessed grant funds to secure the property. HUD also encouraged the creation of nonprofits housing authorities could utilize to assist in development. This nonprofit I'm speaking about is called Garden City Neighbors, and it borrowed money from Missoula Housing Authority, turned around, and purchased 4 parcels along the Clark Fork River in Missoula to hold it for the North Missoula Community Development Corporation, while they generated funds necessary to fulfill their vision. NMCDC has built 25 wonderful home ownership units there on a site that is utilizes a land trust. We talked about that last night during Ann's presentation. And MHA has been paid back that money to then leverage it into other projects. And 25 low to moderate income homeowners live in a gorgeous community on the Clark Fork River. These are a couple of examples of collaboration and innovation, tenors of both the Wheeler Center and the Joint Center for Housing Studies. Groups such as these promote the informed discussion of topics like affordable housing. And that is why I am so pleased to introduce a man that has been working diligently on public education and policy regarding housing for over 30 years, as faculty with Harvard University at the Joint Center for Housing Studies. There he has authored or co-authored over 36 Joint Center publications and is well known for his research and writing in the areas of household and family demography, population dynamics, household studies, and household forecasting. So without further ado, please help me welcome Mr. George Masnick.
Thank you. I think I'll try to talk from down here and stay out of the I have 4 goals in this presentation. I want to briefly review housing affordability issues that are going to be published in the State of the Nation's Housing that's about to come out next month. Every year, the Joint Center for Housing Studies puts out a report called the State of the Nation's Housing, and it focuses on both current issues and long-term trend issues that relate to housing issues. And we always end with a chapter on housing affordability. The second goal is to highlight some problems in compiling data for affordable housing issues at the local level. I want to use the recent Affordable Housing Report for the city of Missoula, the 2006 analysis of impediments to affordable housing choice, to illustrate several key points. And finally, I want to argue for a strategy of casting a very wide net when dealing with addressing affordable housing issues. First thing we should realize is that affordable housing is a very, very complicated issue. It, on the one hand, has something to do with housing. On the other hand, it has something to do with households. And it's the kind of the coming together of households and their characteristics with housing and its characteristics that create the issues surrounding affordable housing. The household attributes, income, number of earners, household composition, household size, race, Hispanic origin, marital status, you can go on a long list. On the housing side, we have the cost, the size of the housing, the type of housing, the location of the housing, condition, whether it's owner, renter, and other characteristics of the housing. So these two things have to kind of come together to define the affordable housing issues. Part of the problem is that both of these things are changing over time. The demographics and the social and economic side, the household attributes are changing. The housing attributes are changing. The way they mix are changing. So to measure and to track affordable housing issues is a very complicated thing, and you can imagine that many people come out with one set of definitions on one side, one set of definitions on another side, whatever. So it's always very hard to get some sort of consensus or agreement as to what we're really talking about, what we're looking at. But that's the nature of what we're dealing with. It's not as if, well, if we all just did it one way, it would be the right way and it would be fine. There are market forces that are continually undermining housing affordability, escalating housing prices, taxes, energy costs, insurance costs, maintenance. We've got growing income and wealth inequality, in the United States and locally. Housing market discrimination is an important element affecting racial, ethnic, family type households. So you may have affordable housing that's available, but it's not as, quote, as available to certain groups as it is to other groups. You have the changing age and marital status of households, loss of housing subsidies, loss of the housing stock at the more affordable land, local restrictions on building new affordable housing. So all of these things are continually kind of moving us in the wrong direction. On the household growth and composition, postponement marriage and high rates of out-of-wedlock childbearing have resulted in a lot of households that are single-parent households. High rates of divorce and declining rates of remarriage also give us a high rate of single-parent households, or one-earner households, or no-earner households. A growing share of household growth from immigrants and minorities. That's less of an issue in Montana than it is in other parts of the country. But one of the things that we learn is that whatever happens someplace else has a ripple effect and affects us along the way. We have many young adults who are entering the housing market that have high education debt, so it's more difficult for them to take on additional debt. And we have this inexorable aging of the baby boom, and this is something that we're watching pretty closely because of some characteristics of the baby boom in terms of they're fairly well housed, but they also have very high levels of housing debt, of mortgage debt, at a time in their life, or beginning to approach a time in their life when their incomes are declining. And so this mismatch between high housing debt for baby boomers and the potential for income declines, either through a loss of job, loss of spouse, or just normal retirement changes in terms of declining income, is going to create some problems on the affordable side that we're keeping an eye on. So housing affordability has deteriorated rapidly in recent years. We look at owner housing costs. They continue to go up, especially in the West, which is the top line, and the Northwest. A lot of that top line growth in median sales price of existing single-family homes is California driven, right? But, as we know, whatever happens in California has, again, a ripple effect throughout the West. And so we have the high price of single-family homes is creating a lot of equity in California. We get a lot of equity refugees coming out of California and boosting housing prices throughout the West. On the renter side, rents continue to go up. Median gross rent up in 2005 dollars. Affordability has eroded especially rapidly in the last 3 or 4 years. And this is a chart from this year's State of the Nation's Housing, which looks at a couple of the markets, and it contrasts the change in the monthly mortgage cost to buy the median priced home. It's a change in that. Between 2000 and 2003 and 2003 and 2006. And you can see, even though housing prices were going up in the early part of the 2000s, interest rates were coming down. And so the median monthly mortgage price really wasn't changing very much. Up a little bit, down a little bit. Right? But since 2003, housing prices have continued to go up and mortgage rates have gone up. And so when you look at the impact of that on the additional cost of a mortgage, you can see how, at the lower end nationally, it's about $400, $300-something, but all the way up to almost $2,000 a month more for a house in Los Angeles, just because of the shift in interest rates. So the affordability crisis has hit people over the head fairly recently, is the message here. At the same time, incomes have not done so well. In fact, the only income quartile or quintile in which that's gone up has been the top income quintile. The other 4 income quintiles has shown a decline in income since 2000, and I've plotted here that just the 2 lowest, the lowest fifth and the middle fifth, and you can see that middle fifth, for example, after bumping up and down, but a general trend upward, since 2000, incomes have gone down. So you put together prices and costs going up, incomes going down, and again, in the 2000s, it's a fairly recent phenomenon, this is the root of the affordability problem, one of the roots of the affordability problem. We used to talk about people that spend more than 30% of their income on housing as people who are in stress with regard to affordability. But you can see here are low-income renters. These are the bottom income quintile. You can see that in 2005, 80% of them spend more than 30% of their income on housing. So it hardly matters if everybody, to make these distinctions, whether you're spending 30%, if everybody is spending 30% more. And increasingly, the discourse about affordability has shifted. And so now we're referring to people who spend 30 to 50% of their income on housing as, quote, moderately cost burdened, right? And we're focusing more and more on those that spend 50% or more of their income on housing as severely cost burdened. And the severely cost burdened households have grown so rapidly that we can have a discourse about affordable housing without even talking about the 30 to 50% range. I mean, that's how bad it's going. If you look at the growth in severely cost-burdened households just in the year 2004-2005, which is the last year we can get these data for, what I've plotted here, or what we've plotted here, are all of the income quintiles, the bottom quartiles, the bottom quartile, lower middle, upper middle, and top quartile. And the red bar shows the growth in the number of severely cost-burdened households in each of those income quartiles. And the biggest growth has been in the bottom quartile, but the lower middle quartile has had a big growth as well. But significantly, the upper middle quartile has seen growth in severe housing cost burdens. Now, this is actually good news that the upper quartiles are seeing some pain here, because often it takes the middle class to feel these trends to be able to get something done about them. It's not a surprise that the lower quartiles this has happened, but this has gotten the attention of a lot of people who now see it's them. This chart is to make the point that when we talk about homeowners and the cost burdens that homeowners face, we really have to distinguish between those that have a mortgage and those that don't have a mortgage. An awful lot of homeowners have paid off their mortgages. And so their cost burdens come from increasing taxes, energy costs, maintenance costs, and such. Owners with a mortgage have the mortgage costs added on to that. And again, what this shows is that these are debt to income ratios of 40% or greater, and even the 40% figure is that, well, this is just the debt that people have. It doesn't include taxes and utility costs and stuff like that. You add those in, it'll boost it up to over 50%, right? So this is just the 40%. this is equivalent to the severely cost burden. And you can see that owners with a mortgage, 60% of owners with a mortgage are severely cost burden. Again, this is a wake-up call. When you look at individuals in terms of the labor force, we've looked at a couple of groups here: child care workers, retail sales, cashiers, nurses, home health aides, elementary teachers, police officers, firefighters. Percentage with severe cost burdens are very high for the lower paid workers, over 60, 70%, and not as high for the police officers, firefighters, and teachers. Part of the problem in looking at data this way is that these are people who live every place. And a lot of the teachers, police officers, and firefighters are moving further and further out in order to get more. They can afford to buy a house in town, but they can get a lot more house out of town, right? A lot more of what they want. And so they're reducing their cost burdens, right? But they're trading off for being more remote from their jobs and increasing their transportation costs. And if you look at this is a chart of what people spend their money on other than housing. Those who have low housing cost outlays on the left, which are below 30% of their income, and those with high housing cost outlays on the right, which are 50% or more of their income. You can see that those with high housing cost outlays have less than $500 a month to spend for everything else. And one of the big differences between the two groups, the low outlays and the high outlay people, are the transportation costs at the top. And there seems to be a trade-off between transportation costs and housing costs. What I've plotted here are the three cost burden groups: low cost burden, less than 30% on the left, moderate in the middle, and severe cost burdens on the right. And the two bars are for the bottom expenditure quartile and the lower middle expenditure quartile. Expenditure quartiles, it's a surrogate for income quartiles, but it's the amount of money that the household is spending. So we have on everything. So we have a lower group and a middle group. And you can see that the low cost burden on the left have very high transportation costs relative to the high cost burden on the right. Let's just look at the lower middle expenditure quartile, the red bars. So the difference there, $150 and $400, $250 of their expenditures, if you're in a low cost burden situation, goes towards transportation. So there seems to be a trade-off. People are buying more house, cheaper housing, further out, spending more on transportation. Should we when we talk about cost burden, should we add transportation costs as part of the cost burden? I think we should. And if you do that, a lot of these less severe cost burden families and households all of a sudden become more severely cost burden. So the data that we actually are looking at on cost burdens underestimate the true cost burdens, because the transportation should just be part of the housing calculation. To be fair, if we're going to be adding transportation costs in, should we be removing some costs from the mortgage costs? Well, increasingly, we are using our home equity as a source of of funds for credit card debt, college tuitions, healthcare costs, large consumer purchases, vacations, IRAs. I use my line of credit to fund my IRA every year. So my housing cost burden is going up as measured by, that measure, but it's not really going up. And I did the calculus, I'm much better off putting in an IRA than leaving it in a line of credit. So, it points to the fact that the more we use our home equity for non-housing costs, the more difficult it is to get a firm measure, a good measure of affordability issues. Some of this growth and lack of affordability in the recent years has been due to this using of credit in this way. There are other dimensions of the affordability crisis that we often don't talk about. Adult children living in a parental household, and it's not only adult children, boomerang children, or children who never left. It's often whole adult families who come back, grandchildren, both spouses. We have the dimension of crowding. So we can look at places that seem to be affordable, but they're only affordable because people are doubling up in the rooms. We can identify affordable housing that's affordable in terms of the monthly cost of the housing, but they may be in resource-poor neighborhoods, poor transportation, no shopping, remote from schools or parks. You might have public safety issues. So just looking at the cost of the housing out of context with the neighborhood resources that you want to go along with that housing is important. And we often don't kind of fold all of this into what we're doing when we make our calculations about affordable housing. Now this national picture depends on surveys that allow custom tabulations of household characteristics at the household level data. Those charts we've just looked at were developed from these various surveys. The American Housing Survey, which is done every 2 years, the Current Population Survey every year, American Community Survey every year, Survey of Consumer Finances every 3 years, and the Census Public Use Microdata every 10 years. Many of these surveys, except for the Current Population Survey, you're actually able to get the household level data and do the crosstabs you want. So we can look at low-income households. We can look at low-income households with children. We can look at low-income households with children where the breadwinner are in essential services. And we can say, well, what is their affordability? What are their affordable issues? What are the trends? And that's what we plotted in these graphs, custom tabulations. So you'd like to have annual data, it's desirable. You'd like to be able to have a special focus on low-income households. You'd like to treat owners and renters separately. You'd like to have matched data on both the households and the housing. And there are only a few surveys that allow us to do that. And then these questions of how do you adjust these numbers for transportation costs and other uses of housing money. So what about Montana? When we present information like in the State of the Nation's Housing, people always ask us, well, can you do the same for Montana? Can you do the same for Missoula? Right? And the answer is, no, you can't. Let's look at Montana here. We know where Montana is. This is a map of the severely cost-burdened households, which is the dark red. More than 50% of the households in the low-income group in those red states spend more than 50% of their income on housing. Montana is in the 33 to 50% of the households in the low-income category spend more than 50% of their income on housing. And there are a couple of states that spend less than 33%. So Montana is not unlike a lot of the rest of the country in this regard, but it's not as bad as the ones on the red-blue states. Let's look more carefully at Montana. And this map should be familiar to everyone. And here I've divided the map, the state into three parts, according to the population growth rate between 1990 and 2000. And we've got 21 counties in western Montana that the growth rate averaged 17.8%. The 14 central Montana counties, which averaged 6.2%, and the 21 eastern Montana counties, which averaged negative 8.1% growth. Well, a lot of the affordability issues that we talk about are growth-driven. The places that have the highest growth rates generally have the highest affordability problems. Now, this is actually the growth rates, not the averages. And the 21 western counties, the central Front Range counties, the eastern Plain counties. The state average growth rate was 12.9% during that period. How many counties was that growth rate typical of in Montana? Very, very little, right? So any statewide data that you can get for Montana really is practically useless because we don't have a state of Montana. We have at least 3 states of Montana. And so the map, which showed the affordability by states, was a tabulation of the American Community Survey public use data set, which allowed us to go into the individual households and sort the ones out we wanted. The American Community Survey is taking place every year, and you can get data for large counties now in Montana, 65,000 or more from that data, but you don't get a public use microdata set of that. You just get the table that they produce. And the table that they produce for affordability is for everyone. It's not for the lower income groups, it's for everyone. And so you can't even use the American Community Survey data to look at the county data in any meaningful way. And I mentioned to Judy Smith this morning, this is why it's very hard to get anything passed in Helena on affordable housing, right? Because these are the communities that are going to benefit mostly from the affordable housing initiative. These are the guys and gals that are voting on whether to send the money from their community to those communities. It's just hard to happen. It's going to be hard to happen in Montana, right? It's hard to pass a statewide thing. The best thing we can do in Montana would be to have something where we can divide the state up into some categories, and these guys get what they need, these guys get what they need. One shoe fits all doesn't work. So the local picture is hazy at best. There are 3 states in Montana, and it makes statewide data from Montana practically useless. Any state. The surveys used for national picture are not available at the local level. None of these micro data you cannot get them at the local level. And the new 2010 census format is going to make the kind of disaggregations of data that we have been able to do around census years. We're not going to be able to do that anymore. And I'll speak a little bit more about that in connection with the Missoula survey. Now, I want to just put a quote up here. For now, public decision makers will have to muddle along using the best information currently available. This is from a paper by Bill Apgar, a colleague at the Joint Center for Housing Studies, former Federal Housing Commissioner who sits on Dave Stanley's board. This is part of an effort at the Joint Center that was funded by the MacArthur Foundation to take a good hard look at rental housing in the United States. And they had a summit conference back in November in which they had a lot of people present papers, and they've just put all the papers for the rental side on their website, which is at the bottom of the page. I'll put that up again at the end of the presentation. If you're interested in rental housing, this is a very good place to start. Let's look briefly at the City of Missoula impediments to affordable housing choice report. When you open this report, you're hit with a barrage of tables from 1990 and 2000 census. This is a summary file of 3 tables, which are the data from the long form of the census, which has the data on income and other characteristics that you need to look at low-income housing. In 2000, we just saw a bunch of charts which said everything has changed since 2000. Here we're getting a report that's supposed to tell us where we are in the City of Missoula, and it's focusing on 2000 data. It's out of date. It's out of focus because the tables that are available from those summary files aren't for low-income households. They're for everyone. Right? So you can look at the affordability for everyone. You can't split out the various income quartiles, or you can't split out the occupation or anything else. And after 2000, these tables are going to be out of print because the long form of the census is gone. It's being replaced by the American Community Survey. The long form of the census used to be 1 in 6 households, and you could get information right down to the census tract, or even lower, for communities as to what was going on in the census years. American Community Survey is a much thinner survey, and it does not allow you to look at small geographic units. Right? The best you're going to be able to do is large counties. They're going to average data over 3 years, and then they're going to use models to create tables based on the short form census data and some statewide averages to try to figure out what the local level is, but it's all going to be made up data. So if you're looking, for example, in the City of Missoula Housing Report, they had a nice map of where people with disabilities lived in 2000. That's gone. You'll never see that again. You won't know. Right? So this is why when people say, well, can you do this for Missoula? Can you do this with that? The answer is no, we cannot. There are other data that is in this report, post-2000. So they have employment and earnings data, they have population growth data, they have university enrollment data. But these are all things which are suggestive of what might be going on with affordable housing. They don't measure anything that really is going on with affordable housing. It gives you some background as to what the affordable housing crisis is relative to employment trends or enrollment trends or whatever. You can get data from the Board of Realtors or from building permits, but none of these data really have any demographic characteristics that go along with them. So again, you don't know you get the one side of that housing affordability thing, you don't get the household side, so you don't know how it's matching up. Again, these reports contain this data, and if I had to do a report for the City of Missoula, I would put this kind of data in, but they don't really speak to the point. There was mention made of government-sponsored affordable housing programs, but I thought that missing from this study was the many initiatives of the nonprofits on the affordable housing side. there was an opportunity here in this report, not only to have the nonprofits fill out a survey questionnaire, which I didn't find all that interesting, but to sit down with them and say, we know you're in the trenches here, what do you see are the impediments to affordable housing relative to what you do? And then create some sort of a matrix of analysis based on the nonprofit experience. That was really missing from this report, and it was very disappointing. It's very easy to go to the websites of some of the nonprofits in the city of Missoula. They are very proud of the work that they've been doing. You could start there and then ask them about these projects. What were the things that needed to be overcome? What did you learn from this project? How do you move forward? This sort of thing. Huge resource that, unfortunately, the author of that study left out. Also missing from the study was an understanding that most affordable rental housing in a community is not provided by government agencies or nonprofits. It's provided by the private sector. It's individuals. It's mom and pop providing affordable rental housing either within their own home or they own other homes. They're acknowledging this is important because there are things to do to keep these people, these folks in business so that we don't have as much of a loss of affordable housing. On the government-based initiatives, this is just a chart from National Low-Income Housing Coalition Preservation Catalog from Washington, D.C. And I pulled it up because I thought it was interesting. Look at the project-based Section 8 vouchers in Washington, and that's the kind of dotted circle. And the point here is that you have to keep that, if that's where you're working, you have to keep that in perspective relative to other government programs. It's just one of other programs that deal with affordable housing that may have different target audiences. And I think more people should try to think of their own efforts in the context of the efforts that are going on in either in other government agencies or other programs and in nonprofits as well. So these kind of bubble charts, it's a good thing to do. Get a handle on it. This is the National Low-Income Housing Coalition homepage. You can see that there's a lot that you can look at when you talk about affordable housing. And these are, again, federal housing programs. There's a lot there. Relative to this Missoula report, only a few of these were covered. And if they're not an important part of the Missoula housing scene, why not? Are these just underutilized resources or for the local area? Or are there reasons why these resources are not available at the local area? If you're a nonprofit and you're looking to do new things, browse the web. You'll be amazed. This is the Jamaica Plain Neighborhood Development Corporation website. This is their map. These are all their projects that they've done. You click on that, it gives you the whole lowdown on what that project was. A lot of those projects, and this is just outside of Boston, a lot of those projects were conversions of larger non-residential spaces into affordable housing uses. And again, that was I thought, a shortcoming of the Missoula report. It spent a lot of time talking on the amount of bare ground that might be available to build rental housing or affordable housing or any kind of housing on. But it did not talk about the larger structures that might become available for affordable housing and how one might approach that. Maybe the people in the trenches here in Missoula know that that's really not a possibility here. But I would be surprised. In your packet, you were provided with a list of websites that provide some information about various aspects of affordable housing. What was not listed there was this knowledgeplex.org website, which is a clearinghouse for professionals in the affordable housing area. And this is on their homepage, and every one of these things is a link you can click on and get more information. And I put this up because it shows you really how broad affordable housing discussion is. All of these topics are part of the affordable housing discussion. And if you're an agency that's responsible for making sure affordable housing is being pursued in your community, you've got to be concerned about all of these things. And finally, you can visit the Joint Center website. As I say, although the papers from the Rental Summit are on there, but there's a lot more on affordable housing there as well. And I'll leave you with, well, hard work needs to be done. We need to slow the loss of affordable housing stock, keeping landlords who offer rental housing in the market, to the market and business. We have to keep the stock itself from falling into disrepair and loss. And my sense is not nearly enough attention is being paid to this. We spend a lot of time talking about adding new affordable housing. We spend less time about converting non-residential structures to affordable housing. And of course, the question of reducing the regulatory barriers to building affordable housing is one which is always present. The very nature of affordable housing problems defy easy answers. The hard data on local housing affordability conditions are extremely difficult to come by. Market and social forces are continually undermining affordability in the U.S. and in Montana. More effort needs to be placed on curtailing loss from the stock, and affordability initiatives are typically widely scattered, and that's good. But they're all part of the solution, and they all need to be pursued. And I'll leave you with this quote from the late Arthur M. Schlesinger. Problems will always torment us, because all important problems are insoluble. That is why they are important. The good comes from the continuing struggle to try to solve them, not from the vain hope of their solution.
Thank you very much, Dr. Masnick, and unfortunately, we're going to have to hold questions that I know people have for you till a little bit later in the program. Dr. Masnick's going to be with us all day, and you'll have ample time to chat with him later and also to talk to him during the roundtable discussion later on today. So thank you very much. Lots of food for thought there. Thank you very much. You put a lot of work into that presentation, I know, and we were happy to meet you about 6 or 8 years ago when we had a growth and planning conference down in the Bitterroot, and that's when we were first introduced. And so he's a font of knowledge, and who knew, right, in your own area. I'd like to invite the members of the first panel this morning, the community panel, so I'll welcome Dr. Mike Vogel to the lectern, and if all of the folks who are on our community panel will please come up.
Away. We are running a few minutes behind, so we want to